Benchmark Business Sales Valuations proudly presents the Meaning Business Podcast, hosted by Coudrey and Peter Spinda. This is the podcast for anyone serious about buying, selling, and preparing your business for maximum growth.
Hello and welcome to Meaning Business. This is a podcast about small businesses. And I'm Coudrey from Benchmark Business Sales Valuations. And with me today, I've got Peter Spinda.
Thank you, Bruce.
Again.
Welcome back, Pete.
Thank you.
So we talk about small business matters in this podcast. And what we want to talk about today was things that go wrong and the common problems in business ownership and the things that we often see and the things that we've done ourselves, the mistakes that we've made as well. It's a long list, unfortunately. Not today, but some other time we'll talk about the good things that you can do. But I think it is beneficial to talk about the bad things and the things that people do wrong. Nobody sets out in business to screw it up. No one sets out to make it fail. Everyone wants to do the best they can and be successful. So a lot of the things we're going to observe and talk about here are innocent mistakes and innocent errors that people have made. But by pointing them out, it's probably the opportunity for people to think about for us to think about what we do in our business and how we can improve on that, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So where do you want to start, Pete? What have you seen as a common problem?
Well, I'm sort of wondering whether we, get out the punching bag and go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2.
Beat people up.
But we don't want to do that. But there is something that I think, from my point of view, would be a really good starting point. And that would be for you to look in the mirror. And the reason I say that is because very, very often when we're dealing with business owners, the problem is actually reflection, the reflection in the mirror. It's brought on by the business owner themselves. Now, I'm not saying you're a problem, but what I'm saying is that there's certain things that you may or may not be doing that is actually inhibiting the success of your business. And maybe that is causing problems within the business. So when we talk about problems within the business, I always like to say, let's start from yourself, self-reflection, and ask the questions of, well, what are the things that I'm doing? What are the things that I'm not doing? What are some of the behaviors that I've got that may or may not be impacting the success of the business? And things like ego, which we've spoken about now in all the podcast episodes so far. So it might be ego. It might be the fact that you just hate reading and you don't like to learn about new things. It might be the fact that you're just so busy with the day-to-day that you just do not give yourself the time to get away and actually spend some time thinking about working on the business, thinking about the challenges your business is facing, which in fact goes back to an episode we recently shot, which talks about job versus business. And it could also go back to the fact that you love doing what you do so much that you're just too hands-on. You're not willing to delegate. You're not willing to let go of the reins. And as a result, there's systemic problems within the business that don't get addressed because you just don't like doing that. You like doing the mechanics of it, not the actual working on the business aspect, if that makes sense.
So I agree with you that by looking in the mirror, we see not only the issues, but the opportunity to fix it.
Absolutely.
The responsibility for what happens in business is ours. Ultimately, if you're the business owner, even if you're an employee, what happens is you're responsible for how things work and what happens. So we need to take responsibility. We need to address that. And you talked about reading there. That was an interesting thing because people, that really indicates, that what you're seeing is the ability or the willingness to learn and improve.
It's absolutely critical. So
you don't have to read you could listen to an audio.
That's right. So the concept of reading, when I say reading, probably should explain that what I mean is just that willingness to see new things, willingness to learn new things, whether it be through an audiobook, whether it be through a podcast or watching YouTube videos, whatever it might be. The point is that you make yourself aware of new things because it's by being aware of new things that we can actually start challenging our preconceptions within the business, challenging the way that we're doing things, and therefore leading to improvement and innovation, which are two key things that a successful business needs. In order to survive for the next 10 years in business, probably even 5 years in business, you need to be thinking like that. Absolutely critical.
So I thought we'd talk about a couple of things. I've made a little list here. I thought we'd just talk about this. So ego we talked about before, short-term thinking, not spending enough money on their business, not having processes, marketing, employment processes is something I thought we'd talk about. business planning, the way we've always done it. These are things that are common problems and deficiencies I see in business owners and the way, in other words, people fix those things up, their business can be so much better.
There are levers within your business, and they're a lever that you can push or pull, and if you don't tend to it, then something negative usually happens. If you tend to it, you can make a positive impact in your business.
Yeah.
There's a really interesting one that you've mentioned there. So you've got ego, which we just spoke about, and that's look in the mirror and really being willing to let go and recognize that we all need to continuously learn and adapt.
Yep. You got to remember what that next one is?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Because the ego thing, I just want to touch on a bit more. So ego is stubbornness. Ego is not wanting to lose or be wrong. So ego is, I often see it where intergenerational, the father or the person that started the business has a son or son-in-law coming through, and they don't want that guy to do better than they did. So they sort of suppress and limit how much control that person has. So that's ego. So it can be conscious or unconscious, but the ego thing could be a real problem in business. And I think what we've got to say to ourselves is to get rid of the ego problem. This is business. It's not personal. It's not about me or you. It's not about personalities. It's business. So what's best for the business? What's best for our customers? And if we start taking that, the way to take ego out is to say this is business, it's not personal. As soon as you do that, I think that turns that around.
Oh, it's a massive, massive change. I mean, if we look at this table here, and I don't know if you can see it in the shop, but this is a round table, and that's what getting rid of ego is. It's about having that round table, which means that everybody has equal value within the organization. Everybody can contribute. Everybody brings something to the table. The reality is that as soon as you've got a team within a business, then that means that as a business owner, you've already lost some of that control, if I can put it that way, because chances are you're not the one dealing with the problems right at the beginning of them, if that makes sense. It's often it's the salespeople, it's the receptionists, it's the workers doing the work. So they often have a different perception and a better knowledge of what's happening in the industry and the environment that you do yourself.
Workplace.
Now, if you've got an ego, then you're not actually going to be willing to learn from them, and you're going to miss opportunities. But as soon as you've got that round table approach and people feel safe within the business to come and talk to you and are valued, and they're able to voice their opinions, all of a sudden things happen in an organization and you build a different culture and you have different successes.
So what you're really saying there, or I'm hearing, is ego is the problem. The way you get rid of ego is by we're all equal, we're all around the table, and everyone's opinion matters. So no one's opinion is greater than another. There's no winners or losers, no right or wrong. We all take responsibility as a team for what happens, and no ego involved.
Exactly. And that goes back to a concept called psychological safety. Now, I'm not going to get all theoretical with you, but if you are interested, look up Amy Edmondson on YouTube and watch some of her TEDx talks. She's one of the pivotal researchers in this concept of psychological safety. And that's all about developing an organization where people feel safe. And when they feel safe, they're able to voice their thoughts and their opinions. They're comfortable because they know that they're not going to get punched around the head. They're not going to be told that they're idiots or they're, all that sort of stuff. And we need that in a business because that's what revitalizes the organization. Really, really critical. So
ego can be a big problem in business.
Absolutely.
No, I cut you off there before. What were you going to say?
No, so I was going to say the same. Okay. So going back to what I was saying, we talked about ego, and often ego leads to short-term thinking. Often ego leads to the me sort of environment, whereas a business owner, it's all about you. It's all about today's winnings. But we're not thinking far enough into the future. We're not thinking strategically enough, thinking 2, 3, 4 years ahead. In fact, my opinion, in the world of business, we actually need to think of business like a game of chess. And I play chess in the world of business. I know where I want to go in 3 or 4 years' time. So the question is, how do I make the strategic moves to get there? Now, we know that chess isn't a straight line. You don't just go direct for the king and that's it. Absolutely. Yeah. So you always take different steps.
So, but the strategy there is, in chess, I'm going to do this and this and this, but if they do this, then I'll have to go this way and change my plan, right?
That's
exactly plan B or a C.
That's right. You're fluid. You're willing to adapt. You're willing to change. You're willing to see what's happening around you.
But that's not short-term thinking. That's all long-term thinking.
That's right.
And that is a problem we see in businesses, that mainly people who have jobs, who work in the business, they're sort of blinkered and they can't see too far. They can only see today, cash flow today, getting something done today. They work on what's urgent, not what's important. So short-term thinking becomes the ruling way of doing things. Yeah.
It's such a powerful force, unfortunately. And part of the short-term thinking, what you've got as the third one on your list, is actually not spending money. And this might sound really weird to a lot of people out there, but in business, you need to spend money. Full stop. You need to invest money into the business, reinvest money. And it might feel like the wrong decision to put someone on because they cost X amount of dollars. But the reality is, by doing that, you're doing other things. You're enabling more time for you to work strategically on the business. It means all of a sudden you can do two things instead of one thing. You can deliver more, you can produce more, et cetera, et cetera. So spending money in a business is absolutely critical. But a lot of business owners out there, sadly, often the ones that in the jobs,
yes,
they don't see that. They don't invest back into the business. They just do the day.
Because they're living short term. Today, we just got to survive get through today, and we'll worry about tomorrow.
Absolutely.
So I want to go back to the ego thing just quickly.
Yep.
Because there's another syndrome that I've witnessed in business, which I think is an issue, which is this is the way we've always done it. Why are you doing it that way? Well, we've always done it that way. But this way is better. No. That's the way we've always done it. That's the ego, really. Ego-driven people usually use the way we've always done it as their defense for not changing.
It's, it is an interesting discussion. So when the ego leads to the way that it's been done forever, what happens is that the identity of the business also changes, and all the individuals within that business actually just adopt the way it's been done mentality. And so that's why you can have organizations with thousands of people all doing silly things simply because it's just the way we do things around here. It's become the identity of the organization. And purely because the business owner is just not willing to let go of the reins of the ego to allow a different identity to develop, which actually should be more flexible and agile. Almost like there's this thing in the web development and technology space called agile methodology, agile thinking. And that's what we need to adopt as business owners.
Yep.
You've got to be fluid. Things are changing rapidly. So we've got to be able to take that information in and adopt our business practices.
So it's not just big businesses like Kodak that weren't prepared or able to be agile and flex and therefore crumbled. It's small businesses as well. We need to get rid of that. That's the way we've always done it mentality. Stop thinking short term, think long term, put our ego to one side, listen to what's best, and be prepared to take a risk and adopt new practices.
So that last thing you mentioned is also another big issue that we see, is that a lot of business owners just aren't willing to take enough risks and big enough risks.
Yes.
So you've got to take enough risks because you don't win every single battle that you take part in.
100% not going to happen.
Absolutely not. But also taking a big enough risk is critical. If you take too small a risk, you're just not going to get the momentum that you want. You're just not going to get the psychological good feel that you get when you take a risk and it works out, the wins. So you've got to take big enough risks.
So I've got this theory about risks and business ownership. So when I'm going to relate this to myself, when I started out in business, I was 23. And there was nothing I wouldn't do. I just wanted to make money. So sell watches in my service station? Yeah, sure, buy 30 grand's worth. Add trailers? Yeah, sure. Put car rental in, trade longer hours. There was no downside in my brain. Nothing was a risk.
Yeah.
I had an appetite for things that were risky. Buy another service station. Yeah, do that. Buy another property. Do this. Nothing would stop me. And that's how I grew. And yes, sure, some things went bad, some things went well. But ultimately, I got to a point where I thought, I'm doing all right. You get to that point, then you think, maybe I don't want to take that risk anymore. No, I want to hang on to what I've got. So you become defensive, risk averse. So I believe that from about 20 to age 40, men particularly, and humans, are happy to take more risks. As we get to the age of 40 and onwards, we're not happy to take risks. And it gets to the point where you're about 60 or 70, oh no, everything's a risk. I've got my in-laws and my mother don't want to travel because it's too risky.
Too risky, yeah.
I'm thinking life's short. You've got to get out there and do it. So we have a change of our perception of risk when we get older. But the only way you grow is when in those 20 to 40 years, or in my case when I was 23, is by taking those risks. Right. So we've got to remember that when we get older and just be prepared to take the risks, maybe make them more calculated risks. That's a good idea. but still be prepared to go, we're going to have a go at this.
And even beyond the age of 40, you've got to be willing to take the risk. But I think the key thing with risk taking is that you've got to do it in a way that it's measured, it's controlled where you can. I was exactly like Bruce back in the early days and then, my 20s, and did some really, really silly things. But some things worked out phenomenally well.
Were they silly? Probably not.
Worked out well. Well, look, one can debate that.
Okay, yeah.
Because you do learn from every experience. But if I look at what I'm doing today, I'm still taking risks, but it's a lot more calculated in terms of the risk. Now, it doesn't mean that everything works out. Definitely doesn't all work out. But it does mean that when the successes come, they're a lot stronger, they're a lot more consistent. And it also means that the businesses that I operate are no longer the job type businesses. They're real businesses, and they have a lot more impact on my personal life as well. So, there's a lot to be said for taking risks, but like we said, you can't take risks if you're a short-term thinker. You can't take risks if you've got an ego. You've got to have the right team, and you've got to be thinking strategy and planning, play the game of chess.
So one of the biggest issues that I see, a common problem in business ownership, is no strategic planning or poor strategic planning. So there's 3 types of plans that we all should have in business. We should have a business plan, we should have a marketing plan, we should have a succession plan. And many businesses don't have that. And once we have those things in place, man, we've got a business then. So for me, 1987, I had service stations, I had people everywhere, I was risk adverse, no risk, risk didn't worry me. And a really great business manager named Graham Marks came to me and said, Bruce, we're at a car wash. He goes, mate, you've got too many people working this car wash. I said, what do you mean? We give customers the best car wash. They line up out in the street where the police had to stop the traffic. But he was right. I didn't have a strategy. I did not know how much I was charging, what it was costing me, what my profit was. I didn't know whether there were certain hours I should be trading or not trading. I didn't know whether there were certain services I should be continuing to offer or not offer. I didn't know whether my margin on certain services was right or wrong. But as soon as he gave me that, and in fact, it took interest rates to get 20% and things to get very seriously badly wrong in my overdraft before I thought, hang on, I've got to do something. I sat down and wrote a business plan, and that changed my life, changed the world, because then I had direction and confidence. And I realised this is why we do things, and it wasn't about, and my ego fought Graham in adopting what he told me to do. So one of those things I see a lot of business owners lacking is planning and strategy. So business plan, marketing plan, and succession plan.
So we've got the blindfolds on. And so just to define the terminologies, strategy is all about where do we want to go. Planning is about how we're going to get to where we're going. Really, really important concepts, because without them, you really got the blindfolds on. You're just kind of hoping, and hope really isn't, it's not a strategy in itself.
That's a good point. It really came clear to me that in business, it shouldn't be gambling.
No.
It's got to be scientific.
That's right.
And the business plan usually enables you to apply science to what you're doing.
That's right.
So we make it, if I do this, this will happen. And then you measure what's happening, and you adjust as you go.
So the business plan itself is agile and fluid. So we're not talking about a business plan that's, this fancy 50-page document and then it sits in the drawer.
Yeah.
It's something that you review every single month. You bring it out, you look at it. But really importantly, what the business plan forces you to do is to understand your numbers. So many times I talk to a business owner and I ask them just basic questions. What was your turnover last month? What was your turnover last financial year? What was your XYZ? And they don't know their numbers. How can you run a successful, profitable business without knowing the metrics? And you need to know the metrics. So
what stops people doing that? Why don't they do it?
There's so many factors to it, but one of the things that I've seen is just the fact that they just don't know numbers. They're scared of numbers because numbers are mathematical.
Right.
They're not a lot of people have a mathematical brain. And
But it's actually not. So this is an interesting thing, a theory. People don't do it because they're either lazy or they're scared or they don't have the time. But usually the scared of numbers is really the real reason. And it's not really numbers. It's not math. We're not doing logarithms or calculus or, long calculations. It's just a number, or throw the word number out. It's a measure of how we're doing. If you stop thinking about it as numbers and start thinking about just a measure of how we're doing, like a dashboard, all of a sudden, and yes, you're right, people don't want to do it, or at least I'm.
But it's the head in the sand situation.
Yes.
It's often,
Yes.
it might not be the fact that they don't like maths. It might be that they're scared of what the numbers are actually going to show them. Because, you know what, they're not doing as well as they thought that they're going to do. So what's the easiest thing to do? You got credit card debt. Just ignore the letters from the bank, requesting the money. And
That's the worst thing you can do.
Absolutely.
The best thing to do is say, okay, what are my numbers? Let's fix this up.
Yes, and so the other thing off of the numbers that I've personally seen, that I've got someone that in mind who I've seen do this, they go and get the wrong advisors, the wrong bookkeeper, the wrong accountant, who are not doing what they should be doing. And sadly, there are professionals out there who shouldn't be in those industries. They're giving the wrong advice, and as a result, this business owner is suffering, and then the business is struggling. So not only do you need to know your numbers, but you also need to make sure that you can rely on the numbers if you're getting them from your bookkeeper or accountant. So make sure you got the right professionals on board.
Can I elaborate on that?
Yeah.
This is a controversial statement. I believe that 90% of accountants and 90% of lawyers are not very good.
Big
That's
statement.
I don't know about the 90%, but a large proportion. And 10% are very good. And when you get a good one, you hang on to it. And I would say dentists, doctors, and all sorts of other barbers, haircut, professionals, not many good ones. When you get a good one, you hang on to it. But a lot of us tend to stick with the same accountant, lawyer, barber, because we always had them and we don't want to change. And that's where the problems set in. So I found, I would like to recommend that people, I think this is another one of those issues that we see in businesses, a problem, where people stick with the bad advisor.
Fear of change, and they're just not, or they don't see that they're a bad advisor. If we talk about, okay, well, what makes a good accountant? And then there's so many factors into it. But from my point of view, one of the factors is that a good accountant doesn't just get your end of financial year taxation done for the company, done and dusted, and that's it.
Compliance.
Good accountant is actually proactive, and they work with you, and you might get that phone call once every 3 months or 6 months. You meet them regularly. You have the conversations around the direction of the business, and you sit down and look at the cash flow forecasts and P&Ls and things.
Exactly. Proactive.
They're proactive.
And hard to find. Have your genuine interests at heart, not theirs.
Yeah. And then they're willing to say it how it is.
Yeah, up to speed with them. Oh, yeah, that's another thing. So people don't like bad news, but the truth hurts, right? Truth hurts. And so sometimes accountants don't want to tell us the truth because they want to hurt our feelings. Or that's bad. We need to know, Pete, you need to work harder or longer or cut back on this or spend some more money. That's the sort of stuff that we need to hear. Yeah, bad advisors is another thing that we've on my list here, so I'll cross that one off.
I swear, for many years, I thought of myself as a cleaning person. You go in and clean up the mess from other people. Not to say that I'm an amazing advisor, but you can. There's a difference between good and bad, and boy, there's a lot of bad people out there. So just don't fear change.
So another one, well, we spoke about business plan, I'll cross that off. Another thing that I've seen that I wanted to talk about that I think is a deficiency in a lot of businesses is the way that we recruit people. So I'm still learning about this myself. I've recruited hundreds and hundreds of people over the years, and I had car rental business and service stations and car washes and all sorts of businesses. But what I've realised is that we look at four things. We look at personality, accreditation, motivation, and production. And we tend to think about the first three as being most important, but actually what really matters is the ability to get things done. So once I've adopted that concept that it's about people's ability to get things done, or when I see people employ on that basis, not so much whether they like them or gut feel, but they use metrics to measure that and they use a process, the difference in the business is massive. I was telling Peter today about a guy who's changed his staff and used this process to employ people based just purely on their production ability and raised results by 300%. And he ended up employing people that he didn't think he would have employed, but put them on and made a huge difference. So that's one thing that I'm noticing is that we employ people because we like them or because they're a friend or because we've known them or for whatever reason, they look good. But we should be employing people on their ability to get things done, production.
So asking questions in the recruitment phase around previous outcomes and things that they've delivered and what have they produced.
How do they measure that?
How do they measure that production?
I mean, obviously, we've still got to recruit by values and other things that are really, really important. But we do need to make sure that people coming into a business can produce and can perform. Now, that's right at the beginning of the recruitment stage. Now, if you're in a business and you've already got a team of people, one of the problems that I've personally seen quite a fair bit is that people just they're the wrong people doing the wrong things, and either the task isn't adjusted to make it the right task for that person, or that person isn't exited out of the business. So there's often a fear to move people out of a business. And sadly, that fear can actually hold the business back.
Oh, massive.
Yeah.
So my view is that every business is a people business. So the people that we employ is critical.
Absolutely.
And people are too flippant and just desperate to get anybody on board. But we need to watch that.
Take your time.
So what we've come up with so far is ego, short-term thinking, not spending enough money, bad advisors, not taking responsibility, not being prepared to take risks, saying that's the way we've always done it, not planning strategically or business planning, employment processes. I've got one more. I don't know if you got any more, Pete. But
I've got one more as well.
okay. I'll go first.
Go for it.
Okay. So mine is marketing. I think we can, in business, people either don't spend enough money on marketing or enough time on marketing, or spend too much time on marketing, or waste money on marketing. Getting the marketing right is a real difficult thing. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a challenging thing because to get marketing right, you need to spend the money and you need to experiment and you need to fail. So you just got to be able to take the risks and let it go out. So it all ties together.
Yeah.
But like you said, if you're not spending enough, you're not doing adequate things, you will stall, and then you'll hit a plateau, and you're not going to grow beyond that.
So I sold a tyre business once, and the guy was spending $47,000. This is in the 90s or in the 2000s, $47,000 a year on marketing. The new owner said, "Well, that's a waste of money." He cut the $47,000 a year marketing fee, and the business tanked.
Yep. Common.
Yeah.
Common.
Yeah.
But you can have the flip side, spend all that money and it's not working because you're doing the wrong things as people aren't monitoring it. So
It's a hard one to get right.
my last one is cash. No cash, treasure cash, look after cash, know that cash is king and cash is what we're after. So learn your numbers, understand financial, just the basics of financials. So profit or loss statements, balance sheets, cash flow forecasts, those sort of things. They're your tools of the trade. But value cash. Don't just splurge. Don't just spend it on stuff. If you've got subscriptions going, review them regularly and ask the question, do I or do I not need them? It might only be $5 or $10, but you know what? All those little things add up to a lot of money in business.
You sound like my mother now.
Sorry, Bruce.
No, it's good. He's always right. Well, thanks, Pete. I think that's been interesting today. I look forward to the next session next time, next podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you for watching and for listening.